Monday, April 16th, 2018. Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So it's just before 8 a.m. London. I'm going to look at the markets and I want to talk about greed and avarice and how I think it's irrelevant to keep blaming others for our own shortcomings and weaknesses. In the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own actions. I want to talk about the creature from Jekyll Island and central banking and how we should look at it more neutrally and not blame other groups for the failures that we've had as an economy or society. So before that, let's have a look at what we're doing. Markets are very quiet, I would say, from what I see. I know the stock market is up a bit, but you wouldn't tell there is so much geopolitical tension out there. You couldn't tell, in my opinion. These are like the doldrums, so to speak. So spot gold did trade higher overnight, almost to 1350, got up to 1349. Right now we're at 1343.25, down just under $2. Silver is at 1660, down 5 cents or a third of a percent. Has been as high as 1674, and the low has been 1656. So we are near the lows here in precious metals, which is not surprising. London's coming in, Frankfurt, and the rest of the the usual suspects. The Dow is up 106 points, 24,469, up 0.4%. Has been 100 points higher though, and the S&P is at 2,666. I remember that the other day. It was trading around the same level. That's up 10, also 0.4%. NASDAQ 6,651, up a quarter of 0.4% as well. Currencies are fairly quiet as well, basically unchanged. Sterling 142.45, up 7 pips, which is nothing. Euro is up 3 pips, 123.33, and the dollar is down 10 pips against the yen, 107.25. But one thing I like to note is the 10-year yield, which is the inverse of the price of the 10-year note or bond. That is at 284 right now. So it's only up a basis point and a half, but recently we got down to 273. So yeah, it's starting to pick up again. The high this year so far is 295. A lot of people are looking at 3% as a key level. And that's why there's a market, because some people say the bond bull market that we've had since 1981 is finished, that yields are starting to go up, and they have gone up. The low was 135 in the summer of 2016, and we're now at almost 3%. But some argue that this is it. Yields are going to turn back down and bond prices are going to go back up. Some argue it's the end of the bond market. It's difficult to say. You would have thought we wouldn't be in a bull market when you've had the U.S. national debt go from just under $1 trillion when Reagan took over in 1981 to now at 21 trillion. But I guess that's why the debt has been able to go up, because the cost of funding is so cheap. So the government can keep borrowing and people can keep borrowing. And we get back to that the term I used in the beginning, greed and avarice. People want everything. They want wealth and they want easy money. They don't want to work as hard. They just want things easy, and that's what we get. And this has been driven by, of course, the central banks. But the other side of the coin is the public. They want something for nothing. They want to go on 4 holidays a year. They want to borrow the money to do this and this and that. Yeah, they want to have everything now. So we can't blame specific cultural groups, in my opinion. Some groups have been involved in money lending and banking because they didn't have a choice. They weren't allowed to do other things. And I think we need to focus on the mechanism, and we are to blame. Everyone is to blame. All colors, religions. So that's what I wanted to talk about as well. So the markets, very, very quiet, of course. We'll have to see what happens when the US comes in. This is just an update for people in the US and everywhere else. Someone said, oh, why don't you stop doing your market updates? Well, some people like it, and that's why my viewership has grown. And I talk about other things as well, of course. What about this book, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin? I really enjoyed this book. If you really want to know what the Federal Reserve is about, you need to read this book. I'll go briefly over it. In it, G. Edward Griffin talks about how a banker in around 1910, a set of very big investment bankers from New York and a senator, Nelson Aldrich, all went on a fishing trip down to Jekyll Island in Georgia. They went down on their private train car from Hoboken, New Jersey. But it was so secretive that they used their first names. They didn't use their surnames, so that the servants and the train driver or whoever was serving them wouldn't know who was there. So they didn't want it to get out. And Jekyll Island, I think, was owned by, it was a private club on an island off the coast of Georgia. And that's where they drew up in 1910 the blueprint for the system we have now of endless debt, fiat money, war machine, central banking. I think personally that's one of the big functions of central banks, is to be able to finance big wars. Don't forget, World War I probably wouldn't have carried on that much longer if the warring countries hadn't gone off the gold standard and started borrowing heavily. Napoleonic Wars, the UK went off, they suspended specie payments. What does that mean? Well, that means that they suspended convertibility of banknotes into gold or sovereigns. They had to do that. And ever since 1914, we've had massive inflation everywhere in the world. I won't even talk about the wars. They're still ongoing. So, and yeah, to blame it on a certain group, I think it doesn't help anyone. I think we need to blame it on the mechanism and the reason why it works. The reason why it works is that it's a natural human emotion, greed and avarice. We all are sometimes. We need to control it. And that's how they get away with it. The people who lend the money, and they're from all walks of life, all cultural backgrounds. It's not just a certain group. And I think it's unfair to keep doing that. I'm sure probably some of you will disagree with me, but that's how I feel about it. I'm still not going to stop talking about how fiat money and central banking is immoral and is actually against nature and against a proper functioning society, in my opinion. How rich could you get if you were able to get your local government to give you the power to issue some kind of note saying everyone in this small region has to take this and pay taxes with it. They have to accept it, and you can buy anything with it. You'd be like very rich. you'd also want to start a lot of how can I say, friction everywhere, because you would want the local government to always be asking you for money, and you're going to start fights between rival groups, so that the local government has to get bigger to try to stop that. And the only way they can do that is by borrowing money from you, who has the monopoly, to buy equipment to help keep the peace. And that's what happens in central banking, is a group of people that have this power, this monopoly power. It's not the markets. It's not like every individual in the country. It's monopolized. And that's what the Federal Reserve was. That's what the Bank of England was in 1694. They were given a royal charter, and they still have it. That's what the ECB is. That's what the National Bank of Switzerland is. All these central banks. And they're called central banks for a reason. And it's a monopoly. And that's why monopolies are always viewed badly, because they corrupt things. So that's what I wanted to talk about. I won't go any further. So it's all up to us as well. We need to like reject the system by our actions. That's the way I feel about it. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel, and make sure you also ring the little bell. Even if you're subscribed, because you won't get notified by YouTube if you don't ring the bell as well. And you can also follow me on DTube, Steemit, and on Twitter. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.